We begin this hour with this. President Biden is on the West Coast this morning promoting his climate agenda and his economic policies. But one place he didn't stop while in Arizona was at the border.
Yeah, he was busy. Jillian Turner joins us live from the White House with more. Jillian, that's the last place the White House wants him, right?
Definitely not stopping at the border on this trip, guys. The vice president as well and the president are out on the trail. They are going with this two-pronged message to highlight a year since the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. The president is in New Mexico today. Yesterday, he said this, highlighting his clean energy agenda. Take a listen.
I want to stop all drilling on the East Coast and the West Coast and in the Gulf. The private sector is coming off the sidelines. They've invested $250 billion in alternative energy. There's so much going on. Finally, no one can any longer deny that we don't have a problem with climate change.
Well, the president's energy policies are yielding mixed results. Right now, a gallon of gas averages $3.82 nationwide. That is down from a year ago, but is also just now hitting a new 8-month high. On Biden's first day in the Oval Office, the average was $2.38. Now, VP Harris is out there as well. She is singing the praises of so-called Bidenomics, but she's also, interestingly, acknowledging to union workers that the economy is not working for most Americans. Listen.
For far too long, our economy has not been working for working people. Trickle-down economics benefited big corporations and the wealthiest Americans, but not workers.
So this messaging push comes obviously as the U.S. credit was just downgraded. 9 other world economies have stronger credit ratings now than America. Also, as you guys well know, some major companies, Tyson's, FedEx, CVS, are busy laying off lots of workers. Back to you.
They are indeed.
You can tell that driver to stop backing up now.
I know.
Wow.
But you were like a laser, completely focused. Good job.
Yes, great job. Thank you.
That was one of the 9 wonders of the world, the Grand Canyon. So it was just great to see, and it was just it was good to see that the president likes the Grand Canyon. He really likes the Grand Canyon.
Although he did come back and say, I said 9th, I meant 7th.
Right.
One of the interesting things about the designation yesterday of that Grand Canyon area is there have been a lot of Republicans in that state, and also people in the mining industry. They wanted to be able to mine that area for uranium. Because keep in mind, the United States of America still relies on uranium and atomic power for 20% of our energy in the United States. And that is a prime area for it. The Wall Street Journal this morning says that Joe Biden's uranium ban is essentially a gift to Vladimir Putin and Russia, because rather than haul it out of the ground there, we actually import it from Russia.
Well, it's been almost 1 year since the Inflation Reduction Act, and Kamala Harris, our vice president, was tweeting this. This is Bidenomics, and it's working. But our question is, if it's working, why are interest rates so high? Why are gas prices, as Jillian was just revealing, so high and have gone up almost 30 cents over the last 3 months? And why are people making hardship withdrawals from their 401ks?
Usually a sign of desperation. You got 15,950 during the first 3 months of this year, 36% increase from the second quarter of 2022. Also, you have a country now that has borrowed $1.6 trillion over the past 10 months because we're overdrawn because of the president's ridiculous spending, many of which were jammed down our throats on a simply party line vote. And that's the bad part about lifting the debt ceiling. There's no sense for either side to be fiscally responsible for at least 2 years. And the president's taking the most of that. Now, he had a $220 billion deficit for July. Please tell me how Bidenomics is working in the big picture. He loves the jobs numbers, but do you like worker participation numbers? And do you like where the interest rates are and what it's doing to housing?
Yeah, and Ainsley, to your point about the hardship withdrawals of your 401k, keep in mind, if you are in a situation where you need to take money out of your 401k retirement account before you're 59 and a half, absolutely, there's a penalty and all sorts of, you got to jump through a lot of hoops. But that goes to show you the desperation. It appears most people who are in that situation, before they take the money out of the 401k, they will drain their savings account, or they will use their credit cards.
Yeah, it's a last resort.
Right. And so credit card debt right now, end of June, is $1.03 trillion. That's up about $45 billion. Just goes to show you how desperate people are. We were talking to somebody who's very desperate, a woman by the name of Jessica McCabe. She put out a TikTok about how her kids, her adult children in their 20s, cannot get ahead. They did everything right. She said, work hard, go to college. They did that. They can't afford anything. Watch this.
It's not 1988 anymore. We have to, as parents, realize that the economy has changed. I understand inflation. Prices always go up, but I think that lately the wages are not keeping up with how big the inflation has gotten. I went out yet again with my son to go try to find an apartment he can afford, and we just kept getting backdrops or half the places I felt like should have been condemned that he could afford, and the other half they're wanting 4 times your rent. I hear all the other Gen Zs and millennials in my comments saying that they finally feel seen, because I think us as Gen X, we forget that it's not the same as it is now for our kids. And we think, well, we did it, so they should be able to too. And we need to be their advocate. I didn't have kids to watch them suffer their entire life.
Right. And there's always the option of getting another job, which a lot of people did early on, too. I don't know what her specific situation is, but I just question the politics of it. Just politics. If you're the President of the United States and you sit down with your briefers and your campaign people, if he in fact does, say, should I be running the economy? What's the downside about doing this? You know, I'm going over Arizona, which only won by a few thousand votes. Is this the message that's going to knock it out of the park? That's going to allow me to keep that state? Without that state, you arguably are not going to win. I just question whether telling a bunch of people that green energy is the future, is that going to get your undecided, is going to get your moderates? What it's going to do is make Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders somewhat happy, and the people way to the left who are already sticking with you, they have nowhere to go. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are suing the oil and gas companies for drilling and doing their jobs and making profits and manipulating, they say, people against climate change. No, a lot of people say, yeah, the climate's changing. I am not sure we're responsible for it, nor do I think it's in our best interest of our company to do things like jam electric cars down our throats when we can't afford them, there's no infrastructure, and they don't want them. That's part of the president's legacy. I really wonder who thought this was a good move.
Well, I think he's trying to appeal to the young people who he needs to vote for him next year, because, and it was really interesting, Jillian just ran a soundbite from the Weather Channel. The Weather Channel asked a very political question, which, I'm used to dew points and humidity and stuff like that. And they said, hey, didn't you break a campaign promise to Gen Zers when you said you would limit the amount of drilling in federal properties? And he said, look, my hands were tied. The courts made me do it. Everything Joe Biden does between now and Election Day is about getting him 4 more years with the keys to Air Force One.
Yeah, the green energy thing. And then those companies,
the oil and gas
companies responded and said, that's a false narrative. We have cut emissions. We've listened to you. We've cut emissions. We're doing the best we can.
But it's so smart to do the Weather Channel, because obviously, if you look back at what Devin Archer's been saying, when the president, and excuse me, Dan Goldman's been saying, the congressman from New York, when the president did call into those meetings, all he did was talk about the weather. So when he called into those Devin Archer meetings, so he's good at weather. He wants to be with the Weather Channel.
So
it really makes a lot of sense.
Dealings.
No, only about the weather. And that's why this Weather Channel interview was so up his alley.
Well,
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.